Welcome everyone to a conversation with members of King's Chapel about the environmental crisis on this Earth Day Sunday. We have speakers lined up to speak to you. And my name is Kent Wittenberg. I'm the chair of the King's Chapel Adult Religious Education Committee. And we have been organizing this event in order to be able to have a chance to hear members of our congregation speak about matters that are significant and important to them and help bring us together and work together. So the first of our speakers today is going to be Dory Seavey. And Dory will introduce herself and then she'll speak about her reactions and experience with the environmental crisis.
Hi there, I'm Dory Seavey, and 50 years ago for the first Earth Day, I was a freshman in high school, growing up in the California Bay Area near Berkeley. And I remember having earth shoes and overalls and long pigtails. And I remember going to quite a few marches and demonstrations, and as a young teenager being really struck for the first time about the power of collective action. And that has really stayed with me. As a young adult in the first part of my career, I was full of optimism about solving huge problems. I worked on world hunger, overpopulation issues, poverty issues in developing countries. And it didn't occur to me that we would do anything other than make the world better. So I sit here now in my 60s at the 50th celebration of Earth Day, and it's abundantly clear to me that our generation is not leaving a better world. So I've written down some of my musings about all this in a short essay that will be available with the other materials from this Earth Day offering. So what I wrote about was living today in the midst of Corona, as we all are, and reflecting on what it was like to live through the Northern California fires in 2017. I was out there then and not living in New England. And that fire became the first of what is now 3 successive years of terrible West Coast fires. There's a drought now in California, and an early fire season is predicted again for this year, 2020. I also live right now at the tip of Cape Cod in a very fragile ecosystem that is likely to experience massive erosion and flooding due to rising sea levels in my lifetime, and certainly in the lifetime of my children. So from the surreal beachheads of COVID, for me, the urgency of the building climate tsunami is only getting more real and more powerful. So my own Earth Day perspective is this, that we're in the midst of a species-defining crisis, a full-on climate emergency, and what's required to address this is really the biggest reshuffling of the economy since the Industrial Revolution. And the goal has to be decarbonization, and it's going to require profound changes in how we consume and how we produce. So what really drives me to take action is the fact that each and every day we're deciding what life will be like for the children who were born this year. And I'm actually expecting my 3rd grandchild in September. So that grandson will be 82 years old in the year 2100. And I want him to know that I tried to limit the destruction and to fight for the best scenario instead of surrendering to the worst. So personal virtue is a great thing, but it doesn't really matter unless it's scaled up. And since we can't march together on this 50th Earth Day, I do think that we can each take the time to reflect about how we can scale up our climate concerns and join with others to really take serious action. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dory, for that very heartfelt and profound comment. I imagine a few other people listening might be interested to know what you feel are the appropriate actions to take or steps to take to help address the problem you spoke about.
Yeah, well, I think for sure, probably the most important thing is to vote in all elections, and certainly the one coming up this November is critical. You know, the climate change stuff, there's so many groups, so many people doing wonderful work, and you can do things in one's own personal life, lower your own carbon footprint, but then also, you know, you can be involved locally or work on issues at the state level, the national level, global level. So there's so much information to take in. Two sort of compilations, newsletters that I get every week that I help me sort of survey new articles and ideas. One is the Yale Climate Connection from Yale University, and the second one's called the Weekly GRIST. It's GRIST. I get a lot from both of those. And one group I've been impressed with that's right in the Boston area, it's called Mothers Out First, and there's actually a downtown Boston group. It's for mothers and grandmothers, but anyone else who's interested as well. I like 350 Mass, which is 350 is probably in every major city in the country and also at the national level. Bill McKibben, who's the head of the National 350, is giving an address, I think, this Earth Day, which will be, you know, a virtual broadcast. National Resources Defense Council, I think, does excellent work at the national level. And then the group Environment, which has all sorts of different state level groups, is another one that I'm impressed with. And so there's Environment MA for Massachusetts.
Okay, well, I think what we'll do is we'll have a list of those organizations available at the end of this recording so people can follow up with you or follow links to those other organizations.
That'd be great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dory. Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Ricci. I was also in high school during the first Earth Day, which was difficult for me not to notice because Earth Day is actually on my birthday. So I've prepared a little slide deck that I'm going to share. I'm just going to go through a few of the slides today, but I will make them available afterwards. I'm talking about this now because I'm remembering the role that faith-based groups had in the civil rights movement, and I'm hoping that faith-based groups can have a similar energizing effect, re-energizing effect on the environmental movement. So what's in the slide deck is basically a description of the intent of a project that I'm just embarking on. It describes just one slide each on a wide variety of faith-based organizations and what they're doing with environmental justice. And those really are intended for follow-up discussions, and I will be doing a lot more research on each one of those groups, and I enthusiastically welcome anybody to join me and collaborate with me or just talk with me about what I'm finding, because, you know, even though I'm just starting it, I'm already very hopeful and energized by what I've seen so far. Some of the organizations that I've found so far, and you'll see it touches on almost all Protestant denominations and Catholicism and Judaism and Islam and Eastern religions and even indigenous beliefs. These are actual initiatives, and just some of them that each of these faiths are involved in. And my intent is to, again, cross-fertilize among these groups. And I'm inspired by my knowledge of how scientific communities work. I'm a scientist myself. I'm involved with the AAAS, big scientific society, and specifically their forum on dialogue on science, ethics, and religion. So science as well has an interest in what motivates people, and specifically how faith motivates people. And this group DOSER is, among their many interests, is environmental justice. So I'm really going to bring these scientific sensibilities of community and comparing ideas and perspectives across boundaries to try to energize faith-based initiatives in climate justice. And again, I will share these slides with you upon request. Thank you.
Great, Gary, thank you so much. It's so exciting that you've got this feeling of the interaction, the interconnectedness. It's a beautiful thing that I agree is very exciting. Our own denomination is busy. Our own, our own congregation is getting busy, and this is an offering that makes us really stretch our arms out, opening our hearts. It's a great idea, and I hope it will catch hold and a lot of people will sign right up.
Thank you.
Gary, are you aware of any groups that already are working together across religion?
A little bit. I not too much, because I haven't specifically looked for that yet. Of course, this forum within the AAAS, DOSER, is interested in doing that. There was an interesting connection between Jewish groups and indigenous peoples, which I thought was really, really interesting. That's the only thing I've turned up so far. I think there's a lot of potential here. And, for me, it makes me feel less alone, right? It makes me feel like something really is possible, because there's so many different groups interested in environmental justice, and especially from the faith-based perspective. So I would imagine I'm going to get a lot of interest when I talk to people in these various groups about what other groups are doing that they may not be aware of. That's my hope.
So Gary, do you anticipate having a way to be able to share some of these findings more widely, aside from just emailing you directly, even though it may be in the early stages?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kent, because email is not the greatest way to share information. I will be setting up various social media sites, and stay tuned. We'll keep you informed about that. But they're sort of well-known social media sites that'll make it possible for you all to follow what we are doing and participate.
All right. Thank you, Gary.
Hi, I'm Julie Hyde, and I have been coming to King's Chapel off and on all my life. And I'm happy to be here today virtually and look forward to this moment together. This is like being in fellowship in our coffee hour again. Feels really good to be together. And I thank you all for our new communications together in the interest of our Earth Day celebration, in the interest of our climate crisis attention within our congregation. And I'm just very happy to feel this sense that there is a way to just join in fellowship. I was going to talk about my happy recollections about Earth Day in 1970. It was a very formative time for me. I was newly married and fresh into a new job, and the world just seemed to be coming together, and there was a wonderful awakening happening. It started me on a lot of my activism and my interests, and I felt this great surge of enthusiasm because we were hitting the streets as everyday people and being heard in government. A lot of things happened in 1970s, and that was a wonderful, wonderful time. lately, I've been feeling my age, and I've been feeling the distance from those days. The decades since then have turned a lot of us into more insular stages of life, I think. And the sadness that comes with realizing what we have not accomplished since 1970 is building this sense of dismay and sometimes despair with the terrible things that happen in the world over and over, and with deforestation and extinctions and separation, incarceration, floods. There's so much to worry about that it feels as though we need to deal in our community with sharing these feelings, the love that we have for this amazing world we live in. Today I saw my first barn swallow, and I picked my first dandelion greens for breakfast, and it was a lovely morning, and I'm grateful every day. But I want to be able to deal with the sadness that comes with realization of our crisis and move through fellowship together with our community so that we can share those feelings and that love we have, and hold together our intention, come up through the sadness with empowerment for each other, for ourselves. And there is a practice that I have learned recently, well, in the last 10 years really, of the wonderful Joanna Macy has developed practices for people to understand this journey that we go through, facing our love for the world, facing our pain for the world, and working together to exercise that understanding that we are part of it. We have what we have to work with, and we need to be holding together our intention to keep working on the wonderful things that Dory mentioned and that Gary mentioned. There's work to be done. There's so much work to be done. We need to keep our spirits up and keep our heads up and keep on working. This roadmap for the spiritual practice is called The Work That Reconnects, Joanna Macy's work. And it brings us through 4 stages of awakening, from the accepting the joy of our being and our gratitude for breath and for this world, through the facing of the pain, and then working through our seeing with new eyes together by realizing we are creatures of the world. We are interconnected. We have the energy together that we need. And it's a wonderful feeling that I think now I'm beginning to learn about the power of our tools electronically to be together when we can't be together. And I think it's going to be a possible new skill that I will develop with patience and stamina and courage to bring people together electronically to actually do some of these wonderful practices, sharing our feelings as a community, and being able to help each other remotely. It's a wonderful thing that we will, I hope, be able to learn to do from time to time as possible by Zoom, or I think our electronic opportunities are going to just grow, and it will be a possible source of fellowship for us to keep on keeping on. And I'm looking forward to that. I miss everyone very much, and I think this is a new beginning. Thank you.
Julie, thank you so much. That was just fabulous. So heartwarming. So heartwarming. And I've read a little bit of Joanna Macy, and one concept I was wondering if you could talk about a little bit more is her idea of active hope.
Wow, that is the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is the challenge, and I think really it's this matter of of being, trusting one another to share the depth of our despair and realize that our love and the healing quality of being grateful for everything we can be in this world is going to empower us. It's this matter of not being frozen and numbed by all that is overwhelming us, but to see that this is a gift. This moment is a gift after all, and that active intention to make something of this opportunity that's the empowerment. It's mystical, and it's so human. It's just going to be something great when we develop a way to tap into how to harness our love of being as a group and as a species, as a network that will, as Gary said, I think, that network is the key, and active, interactive hope is the mechanism.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you, my fellow friends and compatriots here at King's Chapel. I felt very inspired by what all of you said. My name is Kent Wittenberg, and I'm going to come at this subject from a little bit of a different angle. And it has to do with expressing one's deep love for the natural world, because I and others have said it, feel that if you don't really truly love the natural world and the earth, it's hard to know how you're going to be spending sufficient energy to save it. So I'm going to mention here a podcast I heard, and I've read this fellow's latest book that I would highly recommend, that really inspired me to do what I'm doing here, which was an On Being podcast with Krista Tippett interviewing Michael McCarthy. And Michael McCarthy is a British environmental journalist who has written a couple of books and many articles addressing the significance of the natural world to all humans. And this interview had a strong impact on me. And I'll read you a couple of quotes from it. Many of us can have a love of nature. If it could also be loved in an informed way that realized what nature means to us, that realized just how essential it is to our spirits, to our souls, to our very beings, and that realized that at a time when it's being destroyed all over the world, thousands of loves like that have real power, since ordinary people's feelings are the beginnings of political will. So in his book, Michael goes on to describe aspects of the natural world that have gone into steep decline. He mentions, for example, a phenomenon he called the moth storm, the title of his second book, which is about how things used to be in Britain. When you drove around at night, there'd be so many moths, it would be like being in a snowstorm. And over time, those moths have just gone away. And we've seen the same thing happen in the US with insects. When I was a child, we'd take a drive on the highway and your whole windshield would be smeared with insects. And that doesn't happen anymore. And we don't talk about it either. And it's very disturbing, because it's not only do we see these big crises we're facing, there's a lot of little ones that are happening that have a profound effect on our earth. So what I'm going to do in the spirit of trying to encourage the loving of the natural world is I have a way of expressing that myself, which is to be in nature, to really try and see what there is around us in the natural world. And I do write some poetry and take photographs. Another thing that Michael McCarthy talks about is the significance of particular places in the natural world in people's lives, how important those can be to a person's soul and spiritual life. I've had the good fortune to have a couple of such places in my life, and one of them is Franconia, New Hampshire. I'd like to close by reading a poem that's set in Franconia, New Hampshire. The poem is called Sunset Everlasting. Winter afternoon in Franconia, little but silence except creaks of branches in the wind now and then. Is this sky of sinew and muscle how it is every moment, somewhere, always? I want to ride the boat with Ra, westward, paddling the earth and sea beneath our feet, stilled by the sunset everlasting.
Well, thank you, Kent. That was lovely, and it's a lovely way to end this session. What I loved about when you started by saying we can't hope to save anything if we haven't harnessed that passion and appreciation for the environment, which is what your words helped us do and your pictures helped us do. It also struck me that noticing is really important, and you're helping us notice. Because how will we even know that we're losing things if we never noticed them to begin with? Yeah. So I think it's, you're witnessing something that's very important for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for your time and for joining us on this Earth Sunday. On behalf of the four of us, I'd like to say that we really hope from here forward that you will get in touch, that we'll have more of an opportunity to continue this discussion and follow through with these activities. And you'll see in the next few slides, we've provided our emails and other ways that you can follow up with some of this information. Thanks very much, and a happy Earth Week and happy Earth Day this coming Wednesday. Everybody.